Hey there, welcome to this lecture. So today in this lecture, we'll be going to set up our CI/CD stuff. That is already we have discussed in our previous lecture. Then as you can see right now, our source code is pretty much ready. So there are all of the application logic and everything, we just kept it inside this src directory. Then outside directory, this db data and node modules, we will be not going to be commit these two directory to the GitHub, right? So first of all, let's try to prepare our project for the GitHub compatibility. So as of now, you can see we don't have any Git initializations right here. So let's try to do the Git initialization. That is the way you can just prepare your project to push the code to the GitHub. So first of all, make sure you have Git installed in your machine, right? So in this case, you can just go to your terminal and you can type git version, right? So you can see this is the version exactly I have installed for my machine, right? So right now what we can do, let's try to go ahead and try to do initialize. So in this case, we can say git init, right? So this is the way we can initialize one Git repository within this particular directory location, right? So you can see our directory is the departmental store, and inside that .git folder, it has to be exist right here. Now you can see we have initialized one Git empty repository, right? So now this by default, this .git directory, it is going to be invisible because this is a kind of hidden directory, right? To check the visibility of this directory, maybe you can see something like this. You can say dir. Maybe we can directly say ls, right? ls that's a, right? So you can see right now we have the .git directory. If you want to see these hidden directories right here in the VS Code, then you need to go to settings, right? Here, go to settings. And so here in the settings, let's try to search for file exclude. This is going to be file exclude, right? So here we should supposed to see what are the file we're going to exclude. So maybe something like this. Then you can see we have our .git file also we're excluding here, right? So that is maybe we can do one thing. Just go here, edit. Maybe we can just directly delete these things from here, right? So now you can see as soon as I'm deleting from here, then it is started showing right here also, right? That is perfect. So is there any save button we can do from here? I think no need to save at all because this is a kind of automatically it's going to be save the file if once you are going to change anything from here, right? So this is perfectly fine. Then what we can do, then we can just close the settings from here, right? Then you can see inside this .git directory, we have a lot of things, right? So we have hooks, info, objects, reference, right? Then config, description, head, a lot of stuff is there. So you can check it out, what exactly it is creating right after created the initialize this directory, right? So while we will be going to do a lot of, because anyway, we are going to do a lot of stuff right there. We will be merging our PRs. We'll be going to rebase our PR. We will do some merging strategy as well as where we will be apply the fast forward or rebase or maybe merging each other, something like that. So now you can see after initialization of our Git repository, this is the way Git is keeping all of the code changes and everything right there while we are switching to it or check out to a different branch in our local machine, right? So now let's go ahead and try to keep hidden this one because this is not required anymore from here, right? So let's go ahead and settings, go to profile, right? And here go to settings, and here again we are going to say the file exclude. Yeah, here I think file exclude. Yeah, here. So add a pattern. We can say just **/ dot, right? Just try to add. Okay. Can you see now it is gone? Cool. Now our repository is initialized here. Now let's go to GitHub and create the remote repository right there. So here in the GitHub, we're going to create one repository. This is the place where we will be going to click on the create new repository, right? And this time we'll be going to keep a name of the repository. In this case, you can say departmental store. Departmental store mono, because I'm just try to keep differentiation of our microservice and monolithic bot in a different way. We're saying departmental store mono, or otherwise we can say departmental store also perfectly fine, because while we'll be going to create our microservices, then we'll be using some kind of postfix or prefix, but this is the name is perfectly fine under my username. So description is optional, right? But it is still suggested to keep some information. We can say departmental store monolithic application. Monolithic application. Perfect. So in this case, I'm going to keep it at private because anyway, this is the repository I'm going to use for recording purpose only. But feel free to create your one. Maybe you can just like keep it public. So why I'm saying public? Because that is the way you can show to your recruiters, or maybe someone can visit your GitHub profile and they can see something at least, right? Rather than keeping all of the repository private, unless you have some secret information, or maybe some project you may not be able to share. But it's highly suggested if you're already, or if you're still learning a process, and if you're creating any projects or something, just to try to push to GitHub repository, right? So that is the way they can, some recruiter or some company, they're always visiting the GitHub profiles and all people's to find out best talent around the world. That is the way you will be gain a little bit more value to your profile, right? So, but in my case, that is not necessary right now because this is the repository I'm going to use for recording purpose only. So that's why I'm keeping it as a private, right? Then README file is not required because I'm going to add these things in a kind of like from the code side, because I'm going to create a README file with some guidelines and all that. Those are the practice we'll be going to follow. On license, you can just like use some kind of license, but in our case, this is private repository. That's there are no any kind of license going to be required. So in your case, if you wish to publish your code as a kind of open source community, then you can just check it out all of the license. So each and every license are meaning to something, right? Definitely, I'm not going to walk it through all of the licenses, but putting a kind of license right here, it's going to be always make sense. So which is going to protect your code, and somebody, if they are just like try to duplicate your code, or maybe just they wanna take some kind of credit just for your original work, then it's going to protect your protect by your license. Now let's try to create the repository here. So can you see like our repository is created, right? So as soon as the repository is created, then there are some few guidelines the GitHub is giving to you. So there are two ways you can see like you can use this repository, the URL, or you can use this repository for your existing repository as well, as where you need to set your origin. Or if you have a kind of fresh repository, then you can follow this kind of instructions. So where we need to initialize our repository first, then we need to create our first commit by adding whatever the changes are there. Then we need to change the name of the branch, right? Then we can add the origin of the branch. Then we need to push this particular origin to our GitHub, right? So those are the things we will be going to do. But as of now, you can see in our case, this is a fresh repository, and we no need to rename our branch name, because if your Git is up to date, then definitely as soon as you're initializing your repository, it will automatically get the name of the main. Sometimes it is coming with a kind of different name. As an example, instead of main, it can be a master, right? So then what you need to do, then you need to say git branch, right, -m, then you can say main, right? So this is the way you can just like rename to your main branch, right? Otherwise, you can just like keep whatever name you are going to keep. As an example, in my case, I'm gonna say master, right? So then you can see like this branch is renamed to master. So let's try to go to again main. Maybe we can say git branch -m, gonna be like main, right? Cool. Now let's try to add our git remote URL. This is the URL that is we just copied from our GitHub, right? Then we can just like set it something like this way. Now you can see our remote origin has been set here, right? So this is the time where we will be going to create our commit. But right before creating the commit, we need to skip a couple of directories. As an example, the DB directory that is not required to commit to our GitHub. And this another directory is the node module. That is, we are not going to push it to our GitHub. Let's try to skip all of these two directories. So in that case, let's try to check it out, like if we are in the root directory or not, by keeping something like this, pwd. Pwd stands for present working directory. It's going to tell you like where you are standing right now. So right now our main directory is our parent directory is the departmental store. That is the one, right? So here we are going to create one file. This is going to be like touch, right? .gitignore, right? So what is gitignore exactly? It is. So gitignore is a file which is going to tell to Git like, hey Git, please ignore those files while we are going to make a commit or something like that. So let's try to commit all of these things right here. So this is going to be like, we can say node module, node modules, and we can say db data, db data. Then maybe because I'm using Mac, sometimes like Mac is creating ds store file, so we can say ds store file, we should supposed to be ignore, and I'm gonna say .env as well as, right? Because .env you should not supposed to commit to the GitHub, right? Rest of all the files are same. This is going to be perfectly fine. And Docker Compose also perfectly fine, because sometimes we need to use the Docker Compose also while you will be having another machine, or maybe somewhere we can just like need to spin the application. Then this file is extremely important. Then now our project is ready. You can see as soon as we are adding all of these things, you can see db data and node modules are already, it's like disable mode. You can see it's grayed out right here, and as well as .env file as well. So that means like whatever file name you are going to keep it right here, those are the things automatically going to be grayed out. As an example, if I'm gonna keep the request also, you can see request.http, right? So you can see right now request HTTP also grayed out, right? But this file is going to be needed for us. So let's try to keep this one here. Perfect. So now our repository is perfectly ready for commit, right? So then let's try to add a commit. So in this case, we can say git add. So git add, this dot means like root directory, the whole directory, the present directory. We are saying like add all of the files, whatever present right now in this particular present working directory. That is what we are saying. Or otherwise, you can just like add a kind of a particular file also, right? So in that case, you need to add the name. As an example, you can say docker file, right? Docker file. Then git will be going to add this docker file only to stage. All right, so now you can see we have added this file, git add docker file. So what exactly this git add command does? So initially, while we are making some changes of the files, it's always staying as a kind of like untracked file. So if you see here, some of the files already, it says like U stands for untracked, right? And while you can see like this docker file that is already we have added, and you can see this is it's saying it's already added. And while we are going to do git add the file name or directory name, then those files will be going to sit on the staging area. So where we are explicitly saying like those are the files we'll be going to, these are the files we are preparing for creating our next commit, right? So to check it out individually, maybe you can install one plugin that is it says git graph. So if you go to the extension here, right, in the extension area, then you can install this particular extension or plugin. It's called git graph, right? Already I have installed. If you click on right here, right after install this plugin, then it will going to sit right here. Then you can see like these are the files it is showing. And if you see all of these changes file, it says like U stands for untracked. And you can see we have added this git the docker file. It says like it says right now it's added, index added, right? So this is the way we can add all of the files. So now let's try to go ahead and add all of the files from here, git add, right? And this time we are not going to keep like only one single file name. We will be going to add everything, right? So now can you see all the changes are added right here, right? It says like stage the changes, right? So if you want to unstage one of the file from here, you can just like simply remove from here, right? Just click right here in the minus icon, then it's going to be unstaged. So now let's try to prepare our commit. In the very first commit, we will be going to say git commit, all right? So there's a kind of message we need to say commit -m, and here we will say initial commit, all right? So this is, it should not supposed to be always initial commit, but it's up to you what kind of like message you are going to put it right here. But I'm gonna say like initial commit with test cases, right? So this time you can see like all of the files has been, right now it's gone from the staging area. So that means our commit is prepared, right? So if you go here again to right here in this source control, and if you see here, right here, commit, maybe you can just like click on this graph icon here, right? Then you can see this is our first commit, right? And this first commit is pointed to our main itself. All right, so now let's try to push our code, right? So in this case, what we will be going to say, we'll be going to say git push dash u origin. Right. All right. So what this git push does? So git push dash u means git going to push our code to the upstream by dash u means upstream to our origin main. So that is the remote stuff that is we have added in few minutes ago. So let's try to push our code here. Right now, can you see our code is pushed successfully? So now here in the repository, let's try to refresh this page. Perfect. So can you see right now all of the codes are pushed right here, right? So, and what we are going to do right now, now we will be going to set up our, perfect. So now our code is right here, right? So it's going to be like, perfect. So now our code is pushed right here, right? So let's try to, perfect. So now we can see our code is pushed to our GitHub, right? So let's go ahead to the source code. And what we will be going to do, right now we will be going to set up our CI/CD pipeline here. All right, so now let's set up our CI/CD. So first of all, we'll be going to write some code for our continuous integration. Then maybe in the later stage, once our code is ready for deployment, then we'll be going to cover our CD part, so continuous delivery part. So for enabling the continuous integration, what we need to do, we need to create one directory. This is going to be like .github. Right. So where we will be going to keep all of the GitHub, the continuous integration scripts and codes. And inside this .github directory, let's try to create one more directory. This is going to be our workflows. Right. So here inside this workflows directory, let's try to create one file. That particular file will be responsible for running our continuous integration stuff. Right. So let's try to create one file. This is going to be like ci.yaml. So inside this ci.yaml file, right? So make sure like it is inside this workflow directory. So let's check it out, like where exactly it is residing. So we can say cd.github, right? The GitHub, right? Then workflows. Then we can say ls, right? You can see the file is exists right there, right? All right. So here inside this ci.yaml file, let's try to put some code here. So the first thing we'll be going to keep a name. So name will be our whatever the pipeline name, that is we will be going to keep it here, right? So the pipeline name will be definitely, it's going to be continuous integration, right? So let's try to write something like this. Continuous integration, right? Then the second thing, we will be going to trigger this pipeline, right? This particular continuous integration pipeline on certain event. So the way the GitHub workflow is doing, like, it is going to trigger on in event-driven way. So it is going to keep listen on certain events. And once that particular event is raised, then it can spin certain sort of jobs or sequence of actions they can just like perform. So let's try to take that advantages of the event-driven stuff right here in the GitHub action. So we can say on. So on what event we will be going to trigger this one, right? So we are going to say on push, right? So on push to what, right? So we need to put the name of the branches, right? So in this case, we can say branches. Branches will be it can be main or it can be development or something. But as we discussed in our previous lecture, so we'll be going to keep like, our strategy just like, trying-based delivery. So in that case, only we'll be going to perform certain actions on push or on trigger to our main branch. So in this case, this continuous integration has to spin on each and every pull request. It doesn't matter like which branch exactly we are targeting it is, but still we need to keep track of like, all the branches has to perform this continuous integration. So in this case, we can say it's wildcard, all right? So double star, that means it's wildcard. All of the branches will be going to, we'll be push any codes to any branch, right? In this repository, then this continuous integration will spin, right? Then another thing also maybe we can mention here, this is going to be pull request, right? So pull request can be to any branch, right? So that is what we are saying. Like these are the only two events we will consider to spin this continuous integration pipeline. All right, so now let's try to define the jobs that is we are going to spin while we will receive the trigger for the push and the pull request, right? So those are the things we'll be going to define as jobs, right? So inside the jobs, let's try to name the job, like what kind of job we'll be going to perform right here. The first we can say build and test, right? Build and test, right? And build and test will be, we need to run this particular thing on certain operating system, right? So let's try to choose the operating system. We can say runs on Ubuntu, and TU Ubuntu latest, right? Runs on Ubuntu latest. So inside this job, now let's go ahead and define the steps. So what are the steps we will follow for execute these jobs, right? So first step will be, we will check out the repository, right? So let's try to do that. So we are going to say steps, right? So steps will, first step will be name, and name will be check out repository. Check out repository, right? Then here, once you are going to check out to this repository, right? Check out to repository, then let's try to define like what are the actions we will be going to perform here. This is going to be like uses, right? So uses will be actions. Actions, we can say checkout add b3, right? So this is what we will be going to define. And now let's go to our next step. We'll be going to say next step will be the similar, right? So this time will be name, will be name, and we will set up our node here. So say set up node, set up nodejs, right? So we can say set up nodejs, or we can say set up node also. It's perfectly fine. Then we can say uses, right? So in the uses, we will say here actions set up node add b3, right? b3. Then we will be going to use the certain version of the node, right? So that is what we need to define here. So we are going to say with which version of the node version. We can say node version we will be going to use 22, right? So we can say cache also, we can define here. Cache, we will be going to say yarn. Because as you can see, our source code, we are using yarn, right? So that this makes sense to use yarn. Now let's go to our third step, right? So these things will be in this similar indentation, just like here. And then we can say, again, we will say name. Then name will be, we will say install dependencies, right? Using yarn, right? So we can say yarn also. Perfect. So again, we need to say like what kind of stuff we'll be going to execute. Maybe this time we will be not going to use any kind of actions here. We will say run, right? So because technically, as soon as we are installing the dependencies, we need to install some dependencies, just like using npm or maybe yarn, right? So you can say yarn install dash frozen log file, right? Perfect. So now final step, we'll be going to run our test cases here. So we will be going to say name run test, or you can say run test also, it's enough, right? Then we will say run, right? Run will be yarn test. So make sure this test script exactly, right? It has to be exist right here in the package.json file here inside the script. So already we have this test added right there, right? And if you go here, then everything is cool right now, right? Perfect. So now you can see in this ci.yaml file, we have our name and we have the events. And finally, all of the steps, it's going to be executed one by one. So this is the time where we will be going to create a kind of new commit. So we will test it out whether the CI file will be able to execute in our GitHub or not, right? So let's try to commit this file. So I'm going to be here in the terminal. I'm going to say like, maybe we can say git add, right? And git commit. Then definitely commit messages make sense. So in this case, we are going to say the CI script setup, right? CI script setup. Now let's try to push the code here, right? Then we'll be going to say git push, right? Perfect. So can you see the current changes already been pushed, right? So now you can see right here in the repository, we have a kind of yellow icon that is saying pending. So let's go click on right here. then you should be able to see like what are the things are it is going right there, right? So these are the steps we successfully able to execute right here, and these are the things you can find it out in the action tab also. If you go to the repository here, and there's a kind of option, it's called action, or otherwise if you see right here any kind of like indication there also, you can click, or maybe you can just like click right here, you can go right there. So now you can see everything is going correctly, right? If you click on this build and test, if you click right here, then you can see all of the history right here. So first one was like setup job, right? This is also set up successfully. Then checkout repository, right? So this is like it's gaining access of this particular actions, right? These setup like CI CD integration actions. It's just taking over access of this repository, checking it out, and getting the latest code. Then it is setting up the Node.js environment, right? So in our case, we are using version 22. Then it is installing the dependencies. It says install dependencies using yarn. So all of the dependencies are installed successfully, you can see. Then run the test, right? So this is where all of the test cases we wrote in our project, that is already, it's just like ran through, right? And so you can see here in the run test, this is the same command we ran in our local server. And all of the source code, all of the test cases are passed successfully. So this is the way we can just like set up our CI/CD pipeline. So let's go to source code, and what we're going to do now, we will be going to add some more stuff right here. You can see inside the source, this is perfectly fine. This project structure you can follow. This is a kind of like common Node.js project structure. We have our controllers, we have our routes, and we have our repositories and service, and everything's are on place. And eventually we have like dedicated test cases also for each and every layer, right? So while we are setting up everything in our application, then we just try to keep it loosely coupled. But this is perfectly fine for kind of like generic Node.js application. But we don't wanna keep our knowledge in limited, just like in a generic project, right? So we just wanna increase our knowledge by following the industry standard practices. So in the next lecture, what we will be going to do, we'll be going to set up our project like all of these things, like rather than keeping controller, repository, and service routes, everything. This is pretty Node.js generic, right? So because we are using Postify, you can see like we are following Postify. So Postify has a kind of different set of principles, different set of its own standard of the structure and all. But we should not supposed to forget like we need to follow the solid clean architecture and the solid the principle also, right? So all of these things we will be going to follow, and in the next lecture we will be restructure this project to a kind of like professional way. So where our real coding will be going to start. But that's not the thing. Like you always need to follow the solid principle or the clean architecture in the Postify way. Even if you're using Postify or other framework, also this is the way also you can just like follow, and you can just like create your project, right? Then all right, then see you in the next lecture where we will put our hands on writing some actual code for covering all of the business logic together. Then see you right there. Thank you.